The decision Eleanor Hayes made on that frozen platform would either save her life or destroy her reputation forever. She had 60 seconds to choose, and $17 to her name. The telegram trembled in Eleanor's hand as she stood on the windswept platform of Sweetwater Station, Montana Territory. The metallic taste of fear coated her tongue as she read the words again. Position filled. Do not come. 3 weeks ago, she'd fled Boston in the middle of the night. Fled, not left, though she'd never admit that to anyone. Mrs. Pemberton's Academy for Young Ladies and its pristine reputation were 3,000 miles behind her now, along with accusations she couldn't defend and a scandal she couldn't explain. The teaching position in Montana was supposed to be her salvation, her chance to disappear into the frontier where Boston society's whispers couldn't reach. Now even that lifeline had been cut. Her last $17 wouldn't even buy passage home. Not that home existed anymore. The autumn wind cut through her wool traveling suit, and the sun was already dropping behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. Winter was coming to Montana with all its brutal certainty, and Eleanor had nowhere to go. If you're listening to this story while doing chores, commuting, or just relaxing, drop a comment and let me know where you're from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of the American frontier where desperate choices lead to unexpected destinies. Eleanor pressed her gloved fingers to her temples, trying to think past the panic. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. How many nights could $17 buy? Where could a woman alone find work in a frontier town where respectability was currency and she had none to spend? The station master had already eyed her with suspicion. A woman alone, clearly educated, with Boston written all over her posture. In a town this size, she'd be gossip by nightfall and unemployable by morning if she didn't find respectable lodging. But respectable lodging cost money she didn't have. A girl's voice, small and uncertain, broke through her spiraling thoughts. Eleanor turned to find a child of perhaps 10 years, all knobby knees and copper braids, clutching a worn satchel. The girl's dress was clean but patched in multiple places, her boots scuffed beyond repair. Yet there was something haunting in her eyes, a wariness that no child should possess, as if she'd learned too young that good things don't last. Yes, sweetheart. Are you the new schoolteacher? Pa said she'd have dark hair and spectacles. The girl's face brightened with desperate hope. Please say you are. Please. The raw need in that small voice made Eleanor's heart twist. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. Rose Margaret Thornton, you get back here. A man's voice, rough with frustration and something darker fear, carried across the platform. Eleanor looked up and forgot how to breathe. The man striding toward them was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of summer sky. His hat was pushed back, revealing dark hair shot through with premature silver at the temples. He moved with the controlled power of someone used to hard physical labor, but there was tension in every line of his body, a coiled wariness that reminded Sarah of a wolf protecting its den. The smell of leather and pine and wood smoke preceded him, masculine and wild and utterly unlike the pomaded gentleman of Boston. I told you to stay with the wagon. His hand was gentle as it touched his daughter's shoulder, contradicting the harshness of his tone. Then those blue eyes met Eleanor's, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the weathered texture of his skin, and something else, a bone-deep weariness that spoke of loss carried too long alone. She's the teacher, Pa. I found her. Rose announced. I'm not. Eleanor started. The position's been filled. The man's jaw tightened. Wait. You came for the teaching job? Eleanor nodded, unable to find her voice under that intense gaze. His expression darkened. Thomas Whitley's sister-in-law got it. She arrived yesterday with references and family connections. He glanced at his daughter, whose face had crumpled, then back to Eleanor. You came all the way from Boston for this. It wasn't a question. Eleanor's spine stiffened. How did you? Your boots are too fine for Montana, and you're holding yourself like the world might shatter if you breathe too hard. Something flickered across his features, not quite amusement, not quite sympathy. I'm Daniel Thornton. This is my daughter, Rose. Eleanor Hayes. She extended her hand, and when his calloused palm closed around her gloved fingers, she felt the carefully controlled strength in him, the warmth that seemed to seep through the fabric. "Where are you staying, Miss Hayes?" The question hung in the cold air like a noose. Eleanor's throat closed. She couldn't make herself form the words, couldn't admit just how desperate she truly was. Daniel's eyes sharpened, taking in her single trunk, the telegram, the way she was failing not to shiver. Understanding crossed his face, followed by resignation. "Rose, go wait by the wagon. Now." The girl obeyed, but not before casting one longing look back at Eleanor, as if afraid the interesting stranger might vanish. "How much money do you have?" Daniel's voice was low, direct. Eleanor's pride flared. "That's hardly. I'm not trying to embarrass you." He cut her off, but his tone was surprisingly gentle. "It's nearly dark. It'll snow tonight. There's exactly one boarding house in Sweetwater that's fit for a lady alone. Mrs. Henderson charges $5 a week, once a month in advance, references, and a character witness." His gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. "Am I wrong about your situation?" The kindness beneath the bluntness undid her. "No," Eleanor whispered. "You're not wrong." What Eleanor didn't know yet was that the entire town still whispered about Daniel's wife, about how she'd died so suddenly, so mysteriously. About the governess who'd come after, who'd lasted only 3 weeks before fleeing in the night. About the rumors that Daniel Thornton was cursed, that tragedy followed him like a shadow. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally, he removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "My wife died 2 years ago. Fever took her in 3 days." The words came fast, like he had to get them out before he lost his nerve. "Rose hasn't had a woman's influence since. I'm failing her. She needs learning, refinement, things I can't give her. Mr. Thornton, I need a governess. Live-in position. Your own room, meals provided, $30 a month." The offer came out rushed. "You'd teach Rose, help with the household. Be a proper female presence. Nothing improper. You'd be an employee, respected as such." Eleanor's mind reeled. Every rule of propriety screamed this was madness. A stranger's house. Alone with a man. Her reputation would be destroyed if word got back to Boston, not that there was much reputation left to destroy. "I don't even know you," she managed. "No, you don't." Daniel's expression softened. "But you're out of options, Miss Hayes. And I'm desperate enough to make a questionable offer to a stranger because my daughter hasn't smiled in months and I've forgotten how to fix anything that matters. We're both taking a risk. Why would you trust me with your daughter? Because you have kind eyes, and Rose liked you on sight. That girl hasn't smiled at a stranger since her mother died." He settled his hat back on his head. "And because I saw you do the math just now, calculating how many nights $17 would buy you. A woman who thinks in numbers in a crisis, that's someone I can trust to keep a level head. On a ranch, you need that." Despite everything, Eleanor felt a surprised laugh escape. "You saw that. I'm a rancher, Miss Hayes. I spend my life calculating costs and risks. I've gotten good at reading people." He extended his hand again, and this time it was a proposition, an alliance between 2 desperate people. "Do we have an agreement?" Eleanor looked at that outstretched hand, work-roughened and honest. Then at the little girl waiting by the wagon, hope written across every line of her small body. She thought of the empty Boston boarding house room she'd left behind, of Mrs. Pemberton's cold eyes when the scandal broke, of the suffocating certainty that her life would never be more than chalk dust and other people's children until she was old and forgotten. Montana spread out around them, vast and brutal and beautiful. The mountains rose like promises against the darkening sky. This was madness. This was dangerous. This was possibly the most reckless thing she'd ever done. Eleanor took his hand. "We have an agreement, Mr. Thornton." His grip was firm, warm, and lasted just a fraction longer than necessary. When he released her, she could still feel the phantom pressure of his palm, the calluses that spoke of endless work. "Call me Daniel. If you're going to live under my roof, we might as well skip the formalities." "Then you should call me Eleanor." Something passed between them, a recognition neither could name but both felt. A sense that this hasty agreement made in desperation might be the beginning of something neither had been looking for. As they drove away from the station master made a note in his ledger. Another Eastern woman heading to the Thornton Ranch. He wondered how long this one would last. Daniel cleared his throat and reached for her trunk, lifting it as if it weighed nothing. The ranch is an hour's ride. We should move before the snow starts. Rose was practically vibrating with joy when Eleanor approached the wagon. Are you really coming home with us? It appears I am. Can you teach me to read proper books? Pa tries, but he says the words are too fancy. The girl's hand, when it slipped into Eleanor's, was ice cold. I want to learn everything. Eleanor smiled, something warm unfurling in her chest. I can teach you anything you want to learn, Rose. Daniel helped her into the wagon seat, his hand under her elbow, his touch brief but steadying. As he climbed up beside her and took the reins, Eleanor noticed the tension in his shoulders, the tight set of his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on the leather. This was a man who'd been alone too long, carrying too much weight. The wagon lurched forward, and Rose chattered from the back about the ranch, her horse Clover, the barn cat's new kittens. Daniel said little, but Eleanor caught him glancing at her, assessing, wondering, perhaps regretting his impulsive decision. The snow started falling as they left Sweetwater behind. The landscape was impossibly vast, rolling grassland giving way to pine forests, everything painted in shades of gold and gray under the gathering dusk. It's beautiful, Eleanor breathed. It's harsh, Daniel corrected. Beautiful, yes, but it'll kill you if you're not careful. Montana doesn't forgive mistakes. The weather turns without warning. Winter here isn't like Boston winters. It's darker, colder, longer. The isolation breaks people who aren't prepared. Then I'll have to be very careful not to make any mistakes, Eleanor said lightly, though her heart pounded. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her. I think maybe we both already have, Miss Hayes. Made a mistake, I mean. Or maybe we've both just taken the biggest gamble of our lives. Time will tell which. The ranch appeared as darkness fell, a sprawling wooden house with smoke curling from the chimney, lamplight glowing in the windows. As Daniel helped Eleanor down from the wagon, his hands spanning her waist, she felt the strength in him again, the barely contained power. Their eyes met as he steadied her. His hands stayed at her waist, her hands rested on his shoulders, and for a heartbeat, neither moved. Snow fell around them like a blessing. Welcome to the Twin Pines Ranch, he said quietly, his breath misting between them. I hope you don't come to regret this, Eleanor. I hope we both don't, Eleanor replied. That night, as Eleanor unpacked her trunk in the small but comfortable room Daniel had given her, a letter fell from between her folded dresses, the one she'd never opened, from Mrs. Pemberton. With trembling hands, she broke the seal and read. Eleanor, if you're reading this, you've already left. I must warn you about the advertisement you answered. Daniel Thornton's first governess disappeared without a trace. His wife's death was ruled natural causes, but there were questions that were never answered. The second governess fled after only 3 weeks, refusing to speak of what she'd witnessed. I beg you, if you receive this, do not go to that ranch. Do not. The paper slipped from Eleanor's fingers and drifted to the floor. Downstairs, a door closed. Footsteps moved through the house. Eleanor stood frozen, her heart hammering, as she heard Daniel's voice murmuring to Rose, the gentle cadence of a father putting his daughter to bed. The same man who'd been nothing but kind to her. The same man whose previous governess had vanished without a trace. Eleanor picked up the letter with shaking hands and read it again. Then she walked to the small stove in her room and held the paper to the flame, watching Mrs. Pemberton's warnings curl and blacken and turn to ash. She'd made her choice. She'd taken her gamble. Now she would see it through, whatever the cost. As the last ember of the letter died, Eleanor walked to her window and looked out over the moonlit ranch. The snow had stopped, leaving everything covered in a pristine blanket of white that sparkled like diamonds under the stars. The mountains stood as silent sentinels in the distance, eternal and unmoved by the small dramas of human lives unfolding in their shadows. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. Eleanor's heart jumped, but she didn't move from the window. She thought about the 2 women who had come before her, one who disappeared, one who fled in terror. She thought about Daniel's kind eyes and strong hands, about Rose's desperate hope for a mother's love, about the rumors that death followed this house like a shadow. And she thought about the scandal she'd left behind in Boston, the whispers that had destroyed her career, the accusations she couldn't defend because the truth was somehow worse than the lies. She'd come to Montana with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Whatever secrets Twin Pines Ranch held, whatever darkness lurked in its history, Eleanor Hayes had faced darkness before. She had survived it. She had learned that sometimes the only way forward was through, and that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was choosing to stay despite it. The moon rose higher, casting long shadows across the snow. In the barn, a horse whinnied softly. An owl called from the pine trees. The Montana wilderness breathed around her, vast and wild and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Eleanor pressed her palm against the cold windowpane and made herself a promise. She would uncover the truth about this place, about Daniel, about what happened to the women who came before her. But she would do it carefully, intelligently, and she would protect Rose with everything she had. Because whatever else was true, that little girl deserved better than to lose another woman from her life. And Eleanor Hayes had never walked away from a promise. She turned from the window, unpacked the last of her belongings, and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries to unravel, new dangers to navigate. But tonight, for the first time in months, Eleanor felt something she'd almost forgotten: purpose. As she blew out her lamp and slipped beneath the quilts, she heard Daniel's footsteps pause outside her door. A long moment of silence. Then they moved on, fading down the hallway. Eleanor stared into the darkness, listening to the house settle around her, and wondered what the morning would bring. She didn't know that Daniel stood in his own room, staring at the portrait of his dead wife, wrestling with his own demons and his own dangerous secrets. She didn't know that Rose lay awake in her bed, clutching a worn doll and praying that this time, please, this time the new lady would stay. She didn't know that in the barn, hidden beneath the hay in an old trunk, lay evidence that would change everything she thought she knew. But she would find out. All of it. Soon. What happened to the first governess? What secrets does the Twin Pines Ranch hold? Find out in the next chapter of Eleanor's story by clicking the video on your screen right now. If you're craving more tales of courage, mystery, and romance on the untamed frontier, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. And if this story moved you, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. We'll see you in the next tale, where the truth about Daniel Thornton's past finally comes to light.